you see what I'm saying? When everything's up in the air, why not look at how you want it to be going forward? And the police. Now, I have to say, a story, it made me chuckle, but it shouldn't, because it's very serious, because new recruits are quitting within weeks. They're getting a bit of a sharp shock to their system once they realise things like the violence that they may encounter on the front line. And the bit that made me chuckle was the fact that some of them are realising that they're going to need to work weekends and nights, and that is putting them off. So I wonder, would you be a police officer? Anyway, we'll have that and more coming up, but first let's take a look at tonight's headlines.
Good evening, I'm Tamsin Roberts. These are the latest headlines. Sir Keir Starmer has accused the Prime Minister of failing to deliver on NHS targets after promising to build 40 new hospitals. But Boris Johnson denied claims that the government's hospital building plan is unachievable. The Labour leader also criticised the Prime Minister for appearing to break lockdown rules last year after reports Christmas parties were held in Downing Street.
The Prime Minister doesn't deny there was a Downing Street Christmas party last year. He's not denied it. He says no rules were broken. Both of those things can't be true, Prime Minister. He's taking the British public for fools. And as for following the rules, Prime Minister, it might be good just to look behind you when it comes to the question of masks. As ever, one rule for them, another rule for everybody else.
What I can tell the right honourable gentleman is that all guidance was followed completely during Number 10. And can I recommend to the right honourable gentleman that he does the same with his own Christmas party, which he's advertised for December the 15th, to which unaccountably he's failed to invite the deputy leader, Mr. Speaker.
The government's also urged people to take advantage of the booster vaccine programme by getting jabbed by the end of January. But the Shadow Health Secretary says more needs to be done to prevent the variant from entering the country.
Right, the government takes the immediate practical step of asking people to take a lateral flow test before they board a flight into the UK, because at the moment, the way the system works, you can travel to airports on busy public transit systems overseas, you can go through a busy airport, board a busy flight, arrive in busy arrivals and travel on busy transport home without having had a test, and that cannot be right, and we're calling on the government to take immediate action.
Meanwhile, the World Health Organization's chief scientist thinks current vaccines will be effective against any serious disease. The WHO say they'll have more information about the Omicron variant of coronavirus within days.
We know that vaccines are likely to have some protection. We still need to find out if there is any loss of protection, but we think vaccines will still protect against severe disease as they have against the other variants.
Spain and France are tightening restrictions for travellers from the UK. British visitors to Spain and all non-EU arrivals to France must now prove they've had a negative PCR test. In other news, a man's been arrested after breaching security at the Houses of Parliament. The Met Police say he was arrested on suspicion of trespassing on a protected site and that it's not a terror-related incident. MPs are warning that turning migrant boats back at sea is dangerous and could breach human rights. A joint committee is urging the government to scrap its plans after the Home Secretary Priti Patel suggested it could deter those attempting to cross the Channel. The former head of UK Border Force, Tony Smith, told GBNews France needs to work with the UK to solve the issue.
French strategy is, well, look, we're going to continue to disrupt these camps, but what we're not prepared to do is work with the UK to deal with a joint response on the Channel, which is absolutely what they should be doing. They have a duty, the same as we do, to save lives in their territorial waters. They have a capability to do that, but politically, they're not prepared to do that right now because it suits them.
A World War II bomb has exploded in Munich, leaving 4 people injured. The aircraft bomb went off at a construction site close to the city's main railway station. The Munich Fire Brigade say 1 person has been seriously wounded. Footage has been released of Arsenal defender Gabriel fighting off armed robbers at his home in London. One of the attackers, 26-year-old Abdi Muse, was armed with a baseball bat. He was later arrested and jailed for 5 years. Former US President Donald Trump has strongly hinted about running for office again. Speaking exclusively to Nigel Farage in his first British interview since leaving the White House, he talks about the Capitol Hill riot, Boris Johnson, and discusses his intentions for 2024.
Why would a man who's got all the things you've got, great family, wonderful life, why on earth would he consider going back into that hell again?
If you love the country, you have no choice. It's not a question. It's just, this is a wonderful, beautiful life. But I like that too because I was helping people. That's why I did it. And I think you'll be happy in the future too.
Well, you can watch the full interview tonight in a 2-hour special on Farage at 7 o'clock. Well, those are the top stories. That's all for now. Let's get back to Dewbs & Co.
Thanks for that. Well, keeping me company until 7 o'clock, my panel, James Woodhousen, who's the visiting professor at London South Bank University, William Clewson, who's the leader of the Social Democratic Party, and Joe Phillips, journalist, author and former political advisor. And you know the drill on this show. It's not just about us, it's about you and what you're thinking tonight. If it matters to you, then it matters to me. So get in touch and let me know all your thoughts on all the topics. And anything else, quite frankly, that you're thinking about tonight, you can reach me, gbviews at gbnews.uk, or you can tweet me at Michelle Dewbs or at GBNews. Now, I've got to say, Cheryl and Steve, they're very quick off the blocks today. They've written straight in saying, can't tell you how much we look forward to some sanity at the end of yet another day of insanity. They go on to say, thanks for giving us hope that there's still a chance for libertarian values. And they say, we move every day further from the age of reason. Well, Cheryl and Steve, good evening to you, and I'm pleased that we bring you some sanity, although you've not yet heard James speak yet. He might ruin it, that is for sure. Isn't that right, James? We'll have your thoughts coming up in just a moment. But first, our top story tonight, of course, we have to focus on COVID. It's dominated everything and everywhere again. And today, ministers have been accused of sending mixed messages re-Omicron and of scaring people. And I think they've done quite a good job of it, I've got to say, because many people now have voluntarily started cancelling their Christmas plans. We've seen office bashes cancelled, nativity plays scrapped, and even Santa visits stopped. That's despite, by the way, a World Health Organization official claiming today that most Omicron cases are, I quote, mild. Sajid Javid reckons that the new COVID rules to stop this spread will be reviewed in 3 weeks' time. Where have I heard 3 weeks mentioned before, I wonder, when it comes to all this stuff? And by the way, that 3 weeks is despite the fact that these new COVID regulations are enshrined in law up until March. Anyway, alongside these event cancellations and all the like, many companies have also issued work-from-home notices as well until at least the end of the year, if not into January. So, whilst the Prime Minister is overtly saying that another lockdown is extremely unlikely, I wonder, do you think we're going to find ourselves locked down almost by stealth before we know it, Joe?
Well, I think there are mixed messages coming out of Westminster and Whitehall. We know at the moment that the symptoms are very mild. I mean, that's come out from the World Health Organization and from the scientists in South Africa where the Omicron was first discovered. I think the thing is, this is about buying time to gather some data, to gather some evidence and to see what happens. In the meantime, encourage people to wear masks. And I was very pleased to see on the Underground coming here tonight that almost everybody was wearing a mask, which is great. It's not that difficult and it's not that painful and it really, doesn't cause a great problem. So I think all of those things are quite sensible. Reviewing it in 3 weeks, yes. Obviously, for people who have got Christmas plans, and we saw what happened last year, it was going to be 5 days, then it was 3 days, and we all know anecdotally and really about people who sadly died or became very ill after mixing with people. We have to remember it's the winter. There's also colds and flu, and people are still vulnerable and at risk. And I think we have to be cautious and be sensible. But I think this is about the government pushing back to say to people, you make your mind up, you don't blame us. But it would be really helpful for people within hospitality, travel, transport and other industries if there was a clear guideline from government.
Yeah, and I have to say, hospitality has got off quite lightly in some of these measures because some of the restrictions, like your masks and things like that, you don't have to wear them in pubs. And sometimes I do have to chuckle a little bit because some of these rules, they just don't make scientific sense to me. But what do I know? Because indeed, I am not a scientist. But William, do you think, like, the government is stuck between a bit of a rock and a hard place here? If they don't do anything and this thing turns out to be bad, then, you know, they'll never live it down. So they've got to do something. But what I do worry about is all these mixed messages. You know, they are well, firstly, they're confusing people, and then they're terrifying a whole other group of people, so people don't really know what's what.
Yeah, I mean, first off, to have to face mask wearing everywhere on the tube and everything is quite depressing, in that we wanted to get out of this. We want to get back to some sort of normality, and there's, you know, I can just feel the public groaning at having to do this again. But I'll give the government a buy in that there's a new variant, okay, we don't know much about it. As a party, we supported the temporary restriction on flights, perfectly sensible to do that. We need to have a look at it, but very, very quickly, if this does not cause serious illness and death and approximates to previous variants, we should get back to where we were before this.
And do you believe this whole kind of, we're going to review it again in a few weeks' time? Because I remember, we're going to lock down for a few weeks to kind of protect the NHS. And then there we were, continuing it for God only knows how long.
I agree with that. I can see why people are sceptical, and I can see, I'm not a conspiracy theorist myself. I don't think the government want to do this. I think sometimes governments are opportunistic when these things happen, but I think largely the government we have probably will go back, you know, to where we were before, if this is not a very, very serious. And I think you've just got to hope that's the case, because, as I say, inevitably some of the people will always look at the contradictions inside the policy. You've got, as you said, you've got clubs and nightclubs and pubs, no masks. You've got masks in shops. It is very, very contradictory. But as I say, I'm giving them a couple of weeks, and that's what we'll wait and see.
You're giving them your fair for a couple of weeks, James.
Well, I think what we've got is a miasma of qualified alarmism. You know, you raise the alarm, then you say, don't panic, then you kind of raise the alarm again. It all began with Margaret Chan at the World Health Organization, in fact, with the SARS epidemic, when she raised the pandemic level to 6 and then said, don't panic. So it's not just a Boris thing. Now, I think why we get these mixed messages is because the government, like Labour, is completely unanchored in the common man and the common woman, so that they're so distant from the population that just about anything goes as to what you tell them next, because you will not be held to account, they believe, although an accounting is coming, I think. And I think it's really trivial, some of the stuff that's being said today. I mean, by contrast, if you look at Macmillan, who the cancer charity, they worked out that there's about 47,000 cancer cases that have missed diagnoses recently. That puts, you know, the new variant into complete perspective. And it also shows how trivial Keir Starmer is when he goes on about Boris wearing a party hat or not wearing a mask at his Christmas party. You know, can't we rise above this level?
I think James is right there, and there hasn't been an opposition. That's the problem. Every single time the government's done anything, Keir Starmer's response has been, let's do more. So we've had inside Parliament, there's been very, very little criticism of the government.
But I think, to be fair, I mean, you know, when it first started, nobody knew what was going on, and it would have been ridiculous for the Labour Party, or indeed any other opposition party, to automatically criticise the government. We now know, you know, that they locked down too late, that, you know, there have been all sorts of questions about PPE, equipment, and the way that those contracts were awarded to various people. And we know that some decisions were taken hastily and they weren't the right decisions. We also know today that the government has chosen to ignore the advice from SAGE. SAGE will, I think, because they're scientists, will tend to go on the side of caution.
But the problem with SAGE, the problem from the start, one of the major problems of this whole pandemic has been that the government's been advised by SAGE and NERVTAC, two committees that their remit is very, very limited. And they said that. I mean, you know, the famous epidemiologist, he was only concerned in flattening the viral curve. The problem is that we've had no equivalent committee to look at the broader societal costs and, you know, as James said, the cancer rates, other diseases. So what we've done is we've prioritised policy for a single cause. And we need to get out of that, because I'm convinced, actually, by the end, when someone does a meta-analysis of what's happened over the whole pandemic, deaths from other causes are going to vastly out.
I think the thing is, there's side effects to all of these measures. And I mean, I've got people messaging in now, Joe, saying that you could kind of say, oh, it's only masks and they're not that difficult. But actually, some people would push back and say that even something which on the face of it might seem, oh, you just got to wear this, those kind of things have unintended consequences, side effects, whatever you want to call them. And there's a variety of those. I mean, you've got the environmental impact. We've just had COP, everyone banging on about the environment every 5 seconds, but no one seems to care about all these throwaway masks with plastic stacking up in their billions everywhere. You've got all of the impacts on things like children and their development. Babies, small babies, they learn by kind of mirroring, monitoring.
Oh, for sure.
People with hearing difficulties, that lip read, that have just been cut off from communication.
There are impacts, there is no doubt. But the banging on about it by people who don't like wearing masks, actually behaving like toddlers who refuse to put a coat on when it's raining, is actually...
But the jury's out about...
It's a lovely way of characterising your opponents, Joe, to call them children, you know. Well, I think really what mask-wearing indicates, if I may finish, what mask-wearing indicates, for many people, not all, I wear a mask on the tube, but for many people it's a sign of moral superiority. I care, you don't care because you don't wear a mask. I think that's divisive, and I think really what we need to do is come together. There's a thing called the Together Declaration, and they will be protesting on the week commencing of the 10th of this month against lockdowns and against vaccine passports. Now, when we're putting things in perspective, it's not only the case that 47,000 people have had their cancer diagnosis missed. Average death rates from cancer in this country, I checked with ONS, 147,000 in 2019 and 147,000 in England and Wales alone in 2020. Doesn't that put the question of masks and Keir Starmer's party or anti-party antics into a bit of perspective for you?
But the point about if you are, as a government, saying you should wear masks, then surely it is beholden upon you to set an example. And we have seen Prime Minister in hospitals, on trains, in the theatre, not wearing a mask. We've had Jacob Rees-Mogg, Leader of the House of Commons, saying we don't need to wear masks because we all know each other.
But, Joe, do you cast iron believe that these things, the masks that people wear, the type of mask, the way they wear them, are you resolute in your belief that if you wear this mask, you are genuinely going to protect either other people or yourself or whoever from COVID?
The British Medical Association reckon that it cuts 53% of infections. We all know...
But there's been a number.
Yeah,
I think it's
a lot of scepticism.
There's a lot of scepticism, but it's a little bit like, I don't want to cough over you or sneeze over you. We use handkerchiefs, tissues, or into our hands or whatever. I just think, we're making such a big deal about masks, and I completely agree what James is saying. There are other issues like cancer and lack of diagnosis and many, many other things. And of course there are problems for people who can't or won't wear masks, but I think we do need to put that bit into perspective. We're being asked to, clamp down a bit for the next 3 weeks.
Well, David in Reading has got in contact saying the only people that are causing all this confusion are you, Michelle, TV presenters. Going on, constantly harping on about Omicron. So, Dave, apparently it's my fault, or people like me. And what I would say to that, actually, Dave, I do think that you actually have a point there in the sense of I think that the media generally have a huge part to play in terms of the fear levels that people are experiencing. I would personally like to hope, anyway, I'm only human, I might make mistakes, but I would personally like to hope that I don't stoke up fear and worry and all the rest of it. I would like to think I'm quite calm and rational when it comes to these things, but lots of the parts of the media are less so. Agreed. And they don't always ask the right questions or the questions that would calm the situation down, because often the things that sell newspapers are not calm and sensible thoughts. It's the hysteria, so that might give you an indication there. But thanks for your contact. Going to take a very quick break now. When we come back, I will be looking at politics. Is it time for what I would call quite serious political reform in this country? I certainly think it is. But what do you reckon? I'll be back in just a few minutes.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Hello. Things turning cold out there right now. Frosty for many by morning, and there is the potential for things to be a bit slippery as well. There are ice warnings issued and a little bit of snow in some spots. This area of low pressure is moving away, but it's opened the door to cold air driving south from the Arctic. And where we've got these little weather fronts, they will enhance the showers, and that combination of showers and cold air could lead to some icy conditions. Already across northern Scotland we've got some snow showers. Down the eastern side of England, a mixture of rain, sleet and snow showers, and the potential also through parts of Wales. You could wake up to a covering here, maybe even into the Midlands, and later on through the night across the southwest of England. So we do have that ice warning in place as temperatures drop down close to freezing. Even in towns and cities, rural areas will be well below. And as well as that ice, there is the likelihood of some sleet and snow for southwest England, Wales and the eastern side of England and northern Scotland. Say snow even to lower levels in some locations. As we go through the day, that mixture of rain, sleet and snow will clear the southwest. The showers will ease along the east coast, although there'll always be some. And across northern Scotland, it becomes dry. So for most, it's a dry, fine, sunny day tomorrow. But it will be cold, 3 or 4 degrees at best for most of us. At least the winds, though, will be a little lighter than that biting one that's been blowing through the day today. Then, during tomorrow evening, wet weather returns from the west, and as it hits the colder air, there'll be some snow for a time across Scotland, but even also further south over parts of England and Wales. It could, for a few hours, be a little bit of snow, mostly through the night, however. Perhaps early on Friday across East Anglia and the southeast, and quite quickly any snow will melt and turn back to rain. Quite a grey day then on Friday across the south. Rain clearing, but another spell of rain arriving in the southwest. Further north, though, Friday looks like a bright day with sunny spells and just a few showers, and turning milder across the south.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of 2 wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Hello there, welcome back. Now, we're still rattling on about the whole kind of the vaccine situation, the COVID response throughout the break. I could fill a whole show just on that topic, but I won't. I will move on because let's talk politics, if you don't mind. There is no escaping, of course, the 2 main parties in this country, which is great if you like them. It's fantastic if you want Boris Johnson or Keir Starmer as your Prime Minister. But what if you're frustrated say, I don't know, with the way that the Tories may have handled COVID. Or maybe you won't ever forget Labour trying to overturn Brexit. Maybe you said never again to both of them. And if you did, what are your options? And will any of them really have a chance to get into power with the electoral system as it is? And by the way, 650 MPs. Do we really need that many? And what about the House of Lords with about 800 members, unelected of course? Our second chamber is the second biggest in the world, behind only China, a country which has a population of over 1 billion. Now, COVID, this is my view on this, COVID has kind of thrown everything up in the air, hasn't it? Many people say that life will never be the same again. Well, why don't we take this opportunity then to create some real change? We could look at things like, I don't know, proportional representation. We could look at whether or not we really do need, for example, the House of Lords or all of these MPs. My point in summary is it time to create some real political reform in the UK? William? I suspect I know your answer to this. I'll be very surprised if the answer's no anyway.
No, there is. I think we should do the basic thing and ask a few questions, OK? The first question I would ask anyone is, do you think we're well governed? And honestly, if you take a look at how we're governed, I think a lot of people will say it leaves a lot to be desired. Both parties, I'd say both of them are pretty rotten parties. I think they've denied entrance. I think the electoral system denies entrance and challenges to our political system. So we're not well governed, that's the first thing. Second thing on the actual voting system, is it fair? No, it's certainly not fair, because votes cast don't end up with seats got. So, there's a very, very poor match. You had UKIP in 2015, got nearly 4 million votes, nothing for it. And that can't last. You can't have a system which basically denies millions of people's votes and doesn't value them the same way as others. And then the final question, do you think, what's the purpose of Parliament? Is it there to broadly represent the views in the country? And I think it is. That's what it's there for. And it doesn't, and it can't. Partly because of the way that the big parties gatekeep their selection processes and things like that. But partly, the Brexit event proved it. Think about it. The mainstream majority view was to leave the European Union. How many parties in Parliament had that as their policy? DUP. That's it.
Well, yeah, I was going to say at the time, but, it was all changed post-referendum outcome, but at the time, very few. But so what is it that you would advocate then? Proportional representation?
Yeah.
See, and proportional representation, I think, let me just see if I've got, because one of the challenges with proportional representation, there's various different strands or themes to it. It's not kind of a one-size-fits-all, but if we just have a little look at the kind of nuts and bolts of what it is, proportional representation is the idea, as William was just saying there, actually, that the seats in Parliament would basically be proportionate to the votes cast. So, i.e., as a gauge, if a party gains, say, 40% of total votes, then PR would allow them to gain 40% of the seats. The House of Commons and local councils in England and Wales use the first-past-the-post system. First-past-the-post system is where the candidate who wins the most votes in each constituency is elected. Most countries around the world, by the way, use kind of a hybrid system, I think it's fair to say. William, before I move on from you on this one, there's a lot of criticism about PR. Let's be honest here, it would favour you, a smaller party, but a lot of people will say, well, hang on a second, it's going to create coalitions, it's going to create a scenario where we're spending absolutely ages trying to form a government because you've got kind of, smaller, bitty parliament, if you like, and some would say, well, it then breaks the link between the constituency and parliament.
Yeah, well, let's deal with those. So the first one, I think, I'll give you this. I think what we'd lose if you had PR is this sort of cathartic moment where you flush the loo, you get rid of them, you get them out, right? So you lose that. But let's not pretend that the parties that govern us aren't coalitions, right? Because they are. You only have to have a look at the Tory party. The Tory party at the moment is trying to navigate its way through winning all these red wall seats. And there are some quite good red wall Tory MPs, actually. But then they've got the sort of Knights of the Shires and the free trade liberals down at the south. The Tory party and the Labour Party are massive coalitions. The only difference is that they've done the coalition and they put it to the people. And in PR, you see what the people want, and then you've got to make it work in the Parliament. So that's the difference. You can have systems, by the way, which I don't like party lists. I hate that idea. I want a system where you have larger constituencies and the link between the member and the locality is kept.
Is strengthened. Joe, what do you think to this? Because the reality of it is, to try and get this, some people will say, well, hang on a second, we had a referendum, the alternate vote, AV, was it 2011?
Yes, exactly.
And it didn't pass. But I would say it didn't pass because people didn't really understand it.
No, they didn't understand it, and it was the wrong time. To do it. I mean, it was at the beginning of the controversial Liberal Democrat Conservative coalition between Nick Clegg and David Cameron. If you had done it at the end of that Parliament, when people would have been able to say, oh, actually, that coalition worked, you know, the Lib Dems sort of curtailed some of the Tories' extreme views, the Tories curtailed some of the Lib Dems' views, whatever, then I think you'd have got a better thing. The problem is always, I mean, I am absolutely in favour of PR, and it's important to note that we have it, or had it for the European elections, when we were electing European members of Parliament. We have it in Wales and Scotland, and we have it in London for the mayoral elections.
Yeah, we do.
So it's not that difficult. People can get their heads around it. The problem is when you start talking about it, the PR anoraks go, oh, well, you don't want a single transferable vote and you don't want an AV and you don't want...
And it confuses people.
Yeah, and at that point, people switch off. But the basic principle comes down to this, that your vote, my vote, William's vote and James's vote should be of equal value. And they're not in our current first-past-the-post system, because depending on where you live, you know, your vote won't matter if you're trying to overturn a walloping 30,000 majority.
And what's your view, James? I mean, you've got to be honest, I mean, I can understand why people like Joe and William, I'm not being disrespectful to you, but the parties that we're referencing here, they're smaller. You know, the first past the post is really weighted against them. But you know, if you're like a David Cameron or a Keir Starmer, you're not going to start saying, yeah, let's get some referendum for proportional representation that's going to impact us. So really, whilst it's all great having this conversation, do you really think we'd ever get the opportunity to do anything like that?
If we're strong enough in rebellion, yes, I think we can get it. And I think Joe's quite right. It's a rare moment of unanimity on your panel here, Michelle. That, you know, the people going on about AV this and all the rest of it, you know, it's very boring. And I never looked at it while the Lib Dems favoured it because, you know, I can't get along with them. And I am a little surprised about your remarks about the coalition, but let's pass over that. I think the simple thing is democracy must trump delays in forming a coalition, right? And anyway, we've got enough vacillation, as you hint, already with the existing setup. And I think that what's more relevant, really, is to abolish the House of Lords. I think that's really called for. I mean, I was just looking it up, actually. The Lords Spiritual include 26 archbishops and bishops.
Yeah.
And we've got 30 dukes, we've got 34 marquises, whatever that is, 443 barons being baronial. It's got to go.
Right, so then, because I have to say, it needs serious reform in the House of Lords, in my mind. But you need to have something to almost second check, to mark, if you like, sanity check the House of Commons, the second chamber. You need something. So if you're saying let's get rid of the House of Lords, I'm going to simplify it. Who marks the homework then?
The electorate.
House of Commons.
The electorate.
When?
Whenever they can make their feelings heard, and they will make them.
Every 5 years.
You've still got to have that checks and balances of. You know, scrutiny, and that is what the House of Lords is good for. I mean, I completely agree. In its current form, it's ridiculous. You know, there are people who don't turn up or just pop their head round the door for lunch. You know, it costs an absolute fortune. There are some people who are in the Lords who are there because of their expertise, and those are the people that you want. Absolutely looking at something, you know, a bill on...
But who judges the expertise, Joe? Is that down to you?
But then it goes back to the Commons. I mean, so therefore they're saying to the Commons, you know, this doesn't work, have a rethink. Now, that doesn't seem to be particularly difficult to deal with.
You can't justify it in principle. I know there are some good laws.
So you don't think there should be a second chamber?
No, I don't.
All?
I think you can have a unicameral situation, and it gets a bit technical. But I think the question you've got to address is the English question, because what the statelets in Scotland and Wales and Northern Ireland have done is left England dangling without a parliament, without representation. And our policy is to have an English parliament. I'd prefer it in York. If you have that, you can't have two chambers.
In York? Why randomly York?
Well, you've got to. I mean, we have a north-south problem, so it's got to be in the north. Some people prefer, but it's not.
So you'd move Parliament. So you'd get rid of the Lords. So you'd get rid of the House of Lords. Yeah. You'd have essentially the Westminster, if you like, and you'd stick that in York.
No. You'd have an English Parliament in New York for English matters, so that would be like the Scottish Parliament.
Right.
And then you can't.
And you keep Westminster.
You keep Westminster for UK matters, and it's unicameral. You can have. There are countries that have one Parliament. You can have an enhanced committee system, and remember, Michelle, it would have fewer competences. So you're dealing with foreign policy, the major things that are sort of UK.
Security.
Security. People, but this sounds very complicated, and it is. I think it'll all go at once. I think one thing that people haven't noticed is that people think we live in a two-party system. We don't. We live in a one-party system. The Labour Party has lost Scotland. That's a problem. It's lost the Red Wall. It is not going to get those seats back. And they can't win a national election.
But then what would you say? Parker, one of my viewers, has been in contact saying PR is a no-go. It's present in most European countries, and there they have 2 or 3 general elections every year, which he says is preposterous.
But they point to the worst example. It's not true.
That's absolutely not true.
Say it's not true, Parker?
It's not true, absolutely. But also, actually, if you need elections, then fine, have elections, because otherwise we're stuck with this, we've got another 3 years. Or 2.5 years.
I'm delighted that we hear the word unicameral on your show.
Are you?
Michelle. I mean, that is raising the level.
It's all highbrow debate on
sounds like a type of underwear.
Completely right.
It is.
Is it like Omicron?
Well, don't go there.
Well, I mean, the other thing is that we should have more devolved powers. And I think, we've seen the power of the regional mayors and the voice that they have got. But you also want to devolve even further down so that local authorities, town councils, parish councils, so that people can take more control over their day-to-day lives.
But this is all well and good. How's it going to happen? Do you seriously think Boris Johnson is going to sit there and go, I know what I want, a parliament that better represents the people, so in order for me to do that, I'm going to change the system?
They won't. It'll happen. I'll make a prediction. It'll happen. They'll come. Yeah, that's correct. So a very important thing happened at the Labour conference recently. I think 80% of constituency Labour parties voted for PR. They know.
Huge.
They know that the Labour is a big version of the Lib Dems. That's what they are. They're not They can't be elected. They can't win a general election. You can't have a two-party system. The stitch-up can't be supported if only one party can make a government. So I think in the early 30s, you'll have probably some ghastly rainbow coalition, get rid of it, beat the Tories, and then the SDP will be in. And that'll be good. Sooner.
Well, there you go. Steve says we've got no party representing the people at all at this point. I see nothing wrong with the first past the post system, but we have too many MPs, and he agrees that the House of Lords needs scrapping and reforming. He says get some members of the public included in the House of Lords as well. There you go. Get in touch and let me know your thoughts. Going to take a very quick break. When we come back, I want to talk to you about the police force. There's been lots of focus on the fact that we need more bobbies, don't we? We need more police recruiting. But I wonder, would you be a police officer? The reason I'm going to be asking is because the number of new recruits that are dropping out within weeks of starting is huge, apparently. So let's have a chat about that. And in the meantime, ponder that question. Would you be a police officer?
I think you'll be happy in the future, too.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of 2 wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Hello there, welcome back to Dewbs and Co. Now, the target was 20,000 additional officers to be recruited by 2023. Apparently, we're about halfway through that number. But there is a flaw in the plan because apparently young police recruits are quitting within weeks because they are being put off by the violence and the pressures of frontline duties, including, get this, working weekends and nights. A chief constable said this today. Nick Adderley, who's the head of Northamptonshire Police, said that an apprenticeship scheme that gives the new recruits a degree at the end had the highest dropout rates because entrants were realising that policing was not for them. Made me wonder, would you be a police officer, James?
I don't think they'd have me.
I was just about, you know, as it came out of my mouth,
question.
I was just thinking, I don't know why I'm asking you, because I know the answer is, if I went to Cressida Dick and went, hey girl, I've got a new recruit for you, I'm not sure the response, but go on anyway, would you be?
I've got to say, I'm so old that, I can remember when Private Eye used to describe the police force as the police violence, as we used to call it. And I wonder what these 19-year-olds in Northamptonshire are watching on TV. I mean, it's full of police violence, Now, not every policeman is violent, but, you would think that they vaguely knew what they were letting themselves in for. I think what's underneath this is really the College of Policing being responsible for the dubious legislation around hate crimes, and now the dubious view, especially if you take graduate nurses' schemes into account, that every policeman or woman must be a graduate. And, what's at stake with any job like that, or security or something like that? Have you got any nerve? Have you got any audacity when it's required for? Have you got the character? And we could call them all snowflakes, but that's just being rude. That doesn't do it for me. No. I think really what surprised me was in year one of these apprenticeships in Northamptonshire, you're technically qualified to go on patrol alone. I never see a constable on patrol alone, or as it used to be, in pairs, right? They're too busy clocking hate crimes, in my view, rather than, catching villains. So we've got to reform it.
Yeah. Sorry, Jo, you was about to come in.
No, I do think this whole thing about, this obsession with having a degree is at the root of the problem, because there's no self-selection. The only self-selection in this is, oh, I want a degree. Oh, do you know what? I wish I'd done something else. But you sort of wonder, as James says, I mean, have they not seen Line of Duty? Have they not seen any of the, TV programmes on call, sort of hidden cameras with the police on duty? Have they not seen or read the news? It shows an astonishing lack of awareness, particularly self-awareness, but it is like the nursing campaign to have every nurse with a degree, because you immediately got rid of a whole layer of the SEN, the state-enrolled nurse, who were extremely capable, extremely sensible, compassionate, good people, mainly women, but not all women, and you then offered them the chance to either you're a nurse with a degree or you're a health assistant. I think... And this is the same problem that we're going to face with the police. And actually in the story where this is reported, sorry, William, but they talk about, it would actually mean that people who've been in the services wouldn't be.
Well, there's a great quote in the article, actually. It says, an officer said, at 2:30 a.m. in the morning, when it's all kicking off outside a nightclub and I'm about to get out the police car, I would rather the person next to me had done 4 years in the army than have gotten a 2-1 in expressive dance.
Bang on.
But William, see, I wonder, is there kind of a shift in terms of how we regard the police? So I remember when I was little and being brought up, the police were people that you must respect. You had to listen to them. Now, I must say, I feel a little bit sorry for the police. They seem to get diverted into all of these kind of peculiar things instead of what I would have imagined that you're being hired to do. And I don't know if people respect them in the way that they should or that they once did.
No, that's absolutely true. If you look at, if you speak to police officers, they will tell you that the general public respect for the police is at the lowest level ever. And it's a serious problem. But to this question, I think if the recruits are dropping out, remember there's two sides of this tennis net. They're picking the wrong recruits. I totally agree with you. I think an important part of policing is muscularity and actually intervention. And that is ex-military people. There was a grand tradition of people coming out of the services into the police. And I agree with Joe, far too many people are obsessed with university degrees, far too many. And I think we need to get back to basic policing. My grandfather was a police officer in Liverpool for 30 years, hospitalised twice, He policed dock strikes, very rough environment.
A dog strike?
Dock strike.
Oh, I thought you said a dog strike.
Imagine what that would be like.
Famous Liverpool dog strike.
We were brought up on stories of a sergeant saying, with these striking stevedores with grappling hooks in their hands, very violent environment, and they would say, if you don't disperse, I'll get my officers to draw the batons and charge. And they were outnumbered massively. You could not be a softie in that environment. You had to be tough. We're miles away from that, but the point is that they're recruiting. The point is that if the recruits are dropping out, they're picking the wrong recruits.
Exactly.
Simple as that.
And I think your point about respect for the police, part of the problem is that people don't ever come across a police officer because they're either in the cars, if they're visible at all, or, if you do, particularly in rural areas, we don't all live in big cities. You report a crime, well, the chances of you ever seeing a police officer or it being followed up are so remote.
But why do you think that is, though? Because a lot of people will say, I don't know, I got my bike nicked or my car got broken into and I reported and I was given a crime number and that was it. Why do you think that is? Is it a numbers?
Well, it's a lack of funding, it's a lack of resources, and quite clearly they have to prioritise, like every single organisation. We know that,
There's something else, though, that I just noticed, if I may, just for a moment.
We're frightfully polite tonight, aren't we?
No. Well,
like a dinner party.
I hope it's not my influence.
What I was astonished by, reading the report about Northamptonshire, is that 2/3 of their force have less than 2 years' service, and 88% have less than 4 years' service. So no wonder there's not much respect out there, because they don't all look young, but some of them do look young, and they don't have the experience.
And they don't know the areas, they don't know the families, they don't know the history, and it's that thing of, I know the mythical Dixon of Dock Green and the Bobby on the Beat doesn't necessarily exist, but you do sometimes need to have an interaction with people in order to have respect for them, whether it's doctors, police officers, teachers, car mechanics or...
Well, I've got to say, this topic has got people, really, you guys really are messaging in. Janice has said, Michelle, I don't respect the police. They lost that when they started dancing in carnivals, taking the knees, wearing rainbow colours. What do you expect? She goes on to say, Simon has been in contact saying, Michelle, none of you on that panel have the right to comment. You should be a police officer and then comment. He's an Metropolitan police officer.
Why don't we have the right to comment? I think we do.
It's not very democratic.
And actually, I've been quite sympathetic, and I think a lot of rank and file police officers don't want all this woke. A lot of this is governed by other things. If you ask people, if you actually speak to people.
Yeah, I must say, I do. I think that often police officers, you know, I mean, I tell you, if you are a police officer, by the way, whether current or previous, you're braver than me, because I have to say, I'm not sure that I would see some of the goings on, particularly when you think of like all the knife crime and stuff like that. And I'm not sure that I would want to risk my personal safety to get in and break that up. So if you do and you run towards that danger, then I, for one, certainly wholeheartedly respect you. But nonetheless, you can't deny that there are clearly some challenges, hence you've got so many vacancies, hence you've got so many people kind of dropping out. So hence, I think we absolutely should be debating that. Anyway, I do want to just have a quick talk about something else, if I may, because you might have noticed it is indeed the 1st of December. The Advent calendars are out, which means it's the final run-up to Christmas, isn't it? And when that happens, the lunacy happens. All of these brands coming out with all of these random food items that we apparently must dash out and purchase. I saw one today that caught my eye. It's Terry's. You know, Terry's chocolate orange and Heinz mayonnaise. Have you ever sat at home and thought to yourself, I know the partnership I'd like to see, mayonnaise and Terry's chocolate orange? Well, if you've ever thought that, good luck for you, because they've created this now. You can get a mayonnaise with a chocolate orange. I mean,
They must have been drunk when they thought that up.
Or very savvy in a PR department.
Well, yeah, we're all talking about it.
Yes, we're talking about it.
And it does, I think, that there's some real kind of food items that only ever really wheel out at Christmas. For me, I only ever have Baileys at Christmas, for example. Would never think of drinking it any other time of the year, but Baileys, yes.
Sprouts.
Yeah.
Sprouts.
Chocolate.
Now, there's a debate.
Chocolate orange.
But I think the more unpalatable thing, really, I mean, these brand smiths, you know, they can take a running jump, but their opponents, I'm thinking of some of our Green friends, always make the point at Christmas, no names, no pack drill, that we should be giving less Christmas presents, that they should be electronic presents, that there's so much waste, that we need less wrapping paper, and so on. Well, who are these Scrooges? You know, if we don't celebrate Christmas in the middle of another COVID panic, we're really sunk.
I'm a bit of a Scrooge, I think, so I'm really going to get my kid one present.
And I'm a Scrooge, and you know I am, James, because we had this conversation before, but let's not give the audience a repeat.
As you get older, you should receive consumables, things that you can get rid of. The houses are full of clutter. Yeah, you don't want things.
Speak for yourself.
No, they are. I mean, you go up and down the country. Go to any dump, James. You'll see.
But then, but when it comes to Christmas, it is a pressure, because you do feel, well, I've got to buy him or her something.
But it is interesting, the things that we eat. I mean, I love Christmas pudding. I don't know about the rest of you. I absolutely adore Christmas pudding. It's ridiculous. I only eat it at Christmas, but I could have it all year round, but I don't. I love mince pies.
Turkey's the same.
Yeah, I like
cold turkey. Cold turkey.
Goose is much more fun.
Oh, I think cold turkey.
Goose is posher.
Cold turkey.
Yeah, I mean, they're very posh people who sort of eating swans or something like that, aren't they? But
swans?
I know they can't. I'm aware of that. I'm just.
They'd be frightfully posh. That would be only the Queen.
Well, I tell you, one chef has come up with apparently the best present for a Northerner. I've not called it that. That's what they've called it. And this is a big, massive Christmas pie. Apparently, there you go. It's on the screen. It's a pie, which, as the title would suggest, would have a Christmas dinner in it. You've got turkey, vegetables, stuffing, and pigs in blankets, and all the rest of it. Apparently, it would feed a family of 4. Apparently, that would be the Northerner's dream.
I think that
present.
looks nice, actually.
It looks very nice.
Oh no, but they're all obese up there, Michelle. I jest.
You can't say all Northerners are obese.
I'm not saying it. I'm caricaturing.
I'm a Northerner.
Our
I'm
health.
not obese.
No, I know. Far from it. Our health lobby always wants to go on that. You know, children. We've talked about it before, Joe. But you know, can we really believe, looking around the playgrounds and classrooms, that everybody in the south and the north who's a child suffers from 40% incidence of obesity? No. And so can we not make the Christmas period an excuse for more Puritanism?
I'm going to have to ask you to hold your thoughts, everyone, because look at the time. It is time for us to say goodbye. Joe, William, James, thank you very much for your company. Thank you as well for yours. A final thought there from Bernadette. She gets in touch and says, actually it's Trevor, saying, why don't the police recruit people that are best for the job instead of desperately filling their time, ticking diversity boxes and getting people that will tick a box rather than stick the course. There you go. I'll leave you on that thought. Have a good evening. Coming up, Nigel Farage and Donald Trump. You don't want to miss that. I'll see you tomorrow.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Hello. things turning cold out there right now. Frosty for many by morning, and there is the potential for things to be a bit slippery as well. There are ice warnings issued and a little bit of snow in some spots. This area of low pressure is moving away, but it's opened the door to cold air driving south from the Arctic. And where we've got these little weather fronts, they will enhance the showers, and that combination of showers and cold air could lead to some icy conditions. Already across northern Scotland, we've got some snow showers. Down the eastern side of England, a mixture of rain, sleet and snow showers, and the potential also through parts of Wales. You could wake up to a covering here, maybe even into the Midlands, and later on through the night across the southwest of England. So we do have that ice warning in place as temperatures drop down close to freezing. Even in towns and cities, rural areas will be well below. And as well as that ice, there is the likelihood of some sleet and snow for southwest England, Wales and the eastern side of England and northern Scotland. Say snow even to lower levels in some locations. As we go through the day, that mixture of rain, sleet and snow will clear the southwest. The showers will ease along the east coast, although there will always be some. And across northern Scotland, it becomes dry. So for most, it's a dry, fine, sunny day tomorrow. But it will be cold, 3 or 4 degrees at best for most of us. At least the winds, though, will be a little lighter than that biting one that's been blowing through the day today. Then, during tomorrow evening, wet weather returns from the west, and as it hits the colder air, there'll be some snow for a time across Scotland, but even also further south over parts of England and Wales. Now, it could, for a few hours, be a little bit of snow, mostly through the night, however. Perhaps early on Friday across East Anglia and the southeast, and quite quickly, any snow will melt and turn back to rain. Quite a grey day then on Friday across the south. Rain clearing, but another spell of rain arriving in the southwest. Further north, though, Friday looks like a bright day with sunny spells and just a few showers, and turning milder across the south.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.